Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of HorseShow360 podcast. We have a really special treat today. We're joined today by hunter legend and professional Louise Serio, as well as my co-host Mike Belisle. Don't forget to tune into our YouTube channel, HorseShow360 podcast, to watch full episodes, as well as follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and you can tune in and listen in on all of the podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple TV, iHeartRadio, and all the above. So this episode is about, it's a pretty general topic. And Louise, I kind of thought that you would be an incredible person to have on this episode for a number of reasons. This topic today is really, what do exhibitors want, but on the hunter side? So this may be an extended conversation with many different guests and things along those lines. But if you don't mind giving us a little bit of background on yourself. Obviously, I know your full background, but I don't know that I'm the right person to give a full bio on you and the sport and this world, this industry. So if you don't mind just giving a bit of introduction for everybody, of your background and maybe some of the task forces and programs that you're involved in the hunter industry.
Okay, well, first, thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this. My history is I started with a mother who taught riding in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, and I grew up on a very local level. I had ponies. Devon Horse Show was a huge horse show, and it wasn't even a qualifying show back then. And then I got married, and we got going a little bit more into the bigger circuit. Then I got divorced, and I kept going. I have been blessed with wonderful horses along the road. I have been successful at all the major indoors. I have also been successful with World Champion Hunter Rider. World Champion Hunter Rider is one of the things that Jeff Teal and I started back in the late 80s, and it's a program that continues today, and it continues because of the format that it follows. We feel it's very important that that is really made it have its longevity. I currently now am on a number of task forces in the USHJA. I am head of WCHR. I am vice chair of the National Hunter Derby, and I am on the Hunter Working Group and the National Hunter. So I'm still very active in the governance. I just came
Pretty
back.
much everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I just came back from the annual meeting in Tucson, which I thought went great. I think our new leader, Britt McCormick, did a fantastic job, and I really feel there's a good future right now. I also started and ran a horse show called Brandywine for a number of years. We ran it for 11 years, and I really learned the behind the scenes things that happen at horse shows and how hard it is to how hard it is to make it all happen. I was blessed with good managers again. They did a great job, but the behind the scenes is really, it's a lot. So I realize how hard being a manager is. I think everybody's job at a horse show is hard. I think that they all work hard and strive for success. I do have some pet peeves about shows that I'm happy to bring up or talk about, or, with
Love
the
that.
other thing. Well, the other thing with World Champion Hunter Rider, we get to review the shows that become part of that program, and that gives us or gives me an idea of what people really, really think is important. We're currently looking at a matrix that the members of World Champion Hunter Rider can fill out on each horse show. And then that will be reviewed for the following year's shows, but it will also be feedback for the managers, because I do feel that sometimes they get accused of things that they shouldn't be, and they should be rewarded for all the good that they do. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that comment because, this is why we do this podcast, and the fact that you are on, have been a part of every part of this industry, whether it be on the event side, the exhibitor side, the governing side, everything like that. So Your insight into this stuff is really invaluable, and experience is something that like is really important to what we're trying to put out there. And um, I'll just go comment on the topic that you brought up about WCHR. And it really is the highest performance level, correct me if I'm wrong, of the hunter industry here in America, right? Like, all the top professionals strive to compete in the finals and earn points along the way, and feature WCHR events as the premier events, hunter events in America, right?
Correct, yes.
So, interesting story. Um, when I purchased our June events, years back now, I think it was back in 2020. So I think our first year of operating our June events was 2021. We've done it 4 years now. That event was a WCHR event. We had never, Split Rock Jumping Tour had never organized a big box horse show with 7, 8 show rings, that kind of quantity. It was a little bit of a perfect storm. I'm not saying that we weren't to blame for what happened at that event, but I don't know if people remember, that event was one of the first events open after COVID hit in
We had circles on the
2020.
grass.
No, it literally was in 2020. And so we had to deal with all those. We were literally the first week open of events. So we were, or second week of events open, I believe. And everybody came to our event, and it was the first year we were operating this, 1,400 horse show. And to be fair, we had no clue what we were doing or what we were getting ourselves into. We thought we had prepared for everything, but the quantity, and I was a little, I think you probably remember, Louise, I was a little bit, um, I have my own ideas and ways of how I think sports should go and changes. And I learned real quick that the hunter exhibitor mindset is far different than jumper exhibitor mindset. And,
Mm.
we'll do episodes later about what do jumpers want out of a horse show, and what are the details they look for. But I learned real quick, what worked and what didn't work. And it took us a couple of years. I mean, it really, really did. And I still think we're working on it, and we'll always work on it. But luckily, we've really figured out the kinks for that particular event in June. And I feel like we've made it, really enjoyable for exhibitors. But it was tough. And I remember having a conversation with you 4 years ago about it, about different variables. And there's so many little details that, like, I didn't think of and expect when I was developing the schedule. Specifically, like, amateurs need to go obviously on the weekend for certain reasons, or changing the ring layouts was the biggest thing that affected me at that show. We operated the hunters in Rolex Stadium, and in general, and this is not a knock, but hunters more than anything want consistency, right? They want their environment to stay consistent, the jumps to be special but not scary.
Yeah.
But what are the details that you think, in that regard, that when we look at the industry as a whole, like, obviously some people like progressive stuff, some people don't like change. So as managers, we have to put all these ideas together and everything and say, what's best for the group as a whole. What pinpoint issues, and what do you remember of that experience of dealing with me, so to speak, on our events, that come to mind?
Well, first, I have to say that a little bit of that whole issue was a mistake because you were a first-year horse show, and we really always try not to award WCHR to new horse shows. But I
Mhm.
personally was excited that you were getting into hunters, and I'd had some conversations about it and some ideas, so we awarded that to you, and that was WCHR's mistake, I think, because we just expected you to know all this. as far as the horse show went. I mean, you've made great changes in it, and I think it's a very popular show now. And I think I had to even encourage you to come back and apply for WCHR again because
You did.
it is an important it is a really important program for our riders, and I think that was my key talking point with you. As far as what hunters want, I think you're right with consistency is because we do like consistency, but we also like it in our footing and in our customer service and um, because it's so different from the jumpers. Like for me, the jumpers, um, they you're right. They do their own thing. They have one class a day. They get to not have to work their horses as much. There's just a lot of things about jumpers. It's not subjective judging. That's another huge thing. But
Yes.
for the hunters, we have to go 2 days or 3 days, and then we have a warm-up day, and so I feel that we expect a lot of things to accommodate that part of our sport. The footing obviously is huge, and I think that most horse shows have really conquered that to a certain extent. I think all the main rings are good. I think we always have to remember the secondary rings and the lunging ring, which is just it's a part of our world. We're gonna not be able to not go have a good footing place to lunge your horses for the hunters. Our sport has just gone in that direction. Um, you mentioned the jumps. We are trying to we actually have a forum coming up down here, and one of the things we're gonna talk about is course design because we feel our course design has become very boring, and our jump design
Yeah.
has become very boring. Going back to Brandywine, we would do 2 or 3 weeks before the horse show, we would picture jumps that we were going to be having there. And a funny story is we brought back the Devon log, which was, from 30 years before it, and it was quite a stir. We put it out for warm-up days, and the riders were crazed about it. The horses couldn't care less, but we need to get back into making our hunters a little bit more exciting without changing the whole, uh, I'm not sure what the word is, but, not changing everything about
Tradition
it.
or yeah,
Tradition,
yeah,
okay. But
yeah,
right now we jump a flower box, a wall, a gate, a rail, and if it's an oxer, there's a back rail. We get very few variety to our jumps, and I think we have riders at the top that don't really like change, but we need to change, and we need to
yeah,
have some different jumps and some more challenging courses, and to bring back for me, that's what's gonna bring back the excitement of the hunters, and it really needs it. Derby finals is a perfect example. I mean, they have beautiful jumps. Um,
mhm.
for me, the handy courses could be a little bit stronger, but I've never had to set a course at a huge event like that and to please that many people for sure. So,
I
yeah,
mean, personally
go
go
ahead.
yeah, personally for me, I mean, I'm a large R hunter course designer, I have been for years. I've done plenty of hunter courses, and it was always, following that tradition and not changing, doing but always a little bit scared to do a challenge or go outside of the box because of what the repercussion would be for doing that, you know? So I think that's exciting to hear, and maybe implementing some of those new things that, softly, which we always have to do it softly, but I think it'll bring a little more to the hunter sport and also, for the horses, for development, all those things and rider.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the things you brought up, Louise, are a lot of the things I think I mentioned in our first episode was like, what's horse show 101? What are the basics? You're like, footing is number one. That's across the board, all disciplines. You have to make sure the ground is safe, everything like that. Another point you mentioned was lunging. Like, I think that's something that all events could do better. Like, it's a little bit of a hot topic, and I feel like I could do a whole episode on just lunging, right? Because there are a lot of variables that go into it, like size of venues, things like that, how much you're offering, how much space. Like a lot of people out there think that horses shouldn't be lunged or these kind of things, but that's a little bit irrelevant to the topic. But in general, I think all venues, all facilities, all organizing groups like can put a larger focus on the lunging space. Like for instance, the past 2 years in June, we've um, dedicated the covered arena only for lunging. We don't use it as a show ring. We don't like it's out of the weather. It always has consistent footing as long as we maintain it once every 2 hours. Like it's a large space, and interestingly enough, it's one of the most expensive arenas to rent at the Kentucky Horse Park because it's covered arena. There's a lot of other things that go in it, but there just isn't other good enough space. The lunging arenas that exist there are not good enough. So we're having to take one of the other arenas um, and make that could have been a competition ring, but make it the lunging ring because it's the only, I would say, good and acceptable um, place to lunge in a large space. So, I totally agree with you. Like lunging is something that I think at all events and all venues could be improved upon and made a bigger focus for safety, for all of the above. And then I'm really glad you brought up jumps. Like, we were awarded junior hunter finals this year in June, directly following our June events in Kentucky, and we're so excited about that. But part of that was we developed and started a new partnership for 2025 and beyond with Strideful. And now Strideful did all of the jumps at the Olympics in Paris.
Wow.
And Mihai, the owner of Strideful, is so progressive and forward thinking in all the 3D types of jumps, designs, everything like that. And he's specifically designing an entirely brand new event for the featured hunters in June, which I hope are going to be, special, like unlike any other, because it's so important. Even in the main jumper ring, it's such a focus. You have to have the right materials, you have to have the right designs, you have to keep it special and unique. I've had a great partnership also with Javin Dahlman over the past 6-7 years, and our designs and our jumper rings and hunter rings have been unique and special. And you have to bring new stuff every year. I believe that. Like it can't just be the same old. I think in the hunter world, hunter jumps have become so basic because you can actually rent hunter jumps for cheaper because they can
Yes.
be more basic because you can cover them up with lots of plants, and everybody's like, oh wow, it looks amazing, but the jump itself is not amazing,
Right.
and you can do both. And I think I totally agree with you that that's something that needs to be improved on, that hopefully this year we can showcase that in a new way. um but yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you're involved in so many of these initiatives to bring the sport forward and not only make it a sport, but improve on those traditional details. I think that I personally and our organizing group has gotten a lot of flack for that on the hunter side over the years, especially since that first event in June years ago. Um, we've done a major effort to do a 180 on that because we pride ourselves on trying to listen to everybody. I think if we didn't listen to people, people wouldn't keep coming back and back to our events. And also our main goal is to just make our clients happy. End of story. That's not necessarily my opinion. I've had to learn over the years to make changes to my opinion to say, this is not what the majority wants. And I have to give what the majority wants, whether it be on the hunter side, jumper side, spectator side. It's really irrelevant. Hopefully our ideas as a group are good enough to give people what they want. But that's not always the case. And then we have to explain to the world that we're going to make those changes and try to make it right. We've expanded our management team to help us on the hunter side as well. We've brought on Pat Boyle, who helps us in June, and this year he's going to help us as well in fall. I think now we have one of the best management teams in the industry. We have 4 or 5 managers at all times at all of our events that include hunters and everything. So, we're laser focused on making sure the people that are in charge of those areas are the best at it. You know, first and foremost, I can admit that I'm good on the jumper side. Like this is where my brain goes. I think I can think like an athlete on the jumper side because I've done it my whole life. And it's important for us to find our little niche and just build that team out to make sure everybody's accommodated. So all those little details are like, I actually think those are the basics,
Yep.
those are the basics. That's what events they have to focus on to get better and better, improve and be one of the best shows out there. I can speak for us that we are constantly striving to that. I envision us as, I say it all the time, but we're a specialized organizing group. We're not an organizing group that just wants to focus on mass horse shows or anything like this. Like we want to do special things. We want to do junior hunter finals. We want to do World Cup finals. We want to do 5-star events, whether it be on the jumper or hunter side. And in order to do that, you got to be able to listen to the people. You got to listen to the exhibitors and sometimes admit that when things didn't work and just make sure people see that you're going to make the appropriate changes.
And
What do you think that there are different things that on the hunter side that juniors versus amateurs want differently and professionals like or is it generally the basics we know are the same, but are there like offerings that that need to be thought about on the management side that you don't think are paid attention to enough?
okay, before we do that, I just want to go back to a couple things that you said.
Yeah,
And
sure.
Mike, your new jumps will be a lot less, if you have something new, is to put them out there for schooling so that everybody gets to jump it, and then it gets, you know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah.
It
So you
just
did warm up schooling.
yeah,
Sure.
it makes life so much easier. You also mentioned,
Acclimate.
yeah, Derek, that you maintain your lunging rings every 2 hours. That is awesome because that is not what we see normally, and that's something that we do ask for. Um, that you and your managers are out there and available for us to talk to is huge because many times we go and they hide in the office and then you get more and more frustrated. But being out in us with the dirt makes a huge difference to be able to talk. And sometimes we even have good ideas. And I think that people really, really enjoy your effort. And I think when you make an effort to do a good job like you're doing, I think that's what people really appreciate that. As far as juniors, amateurs, and professionals, I think the one thing I'd like to see for the professionals is that the courses, again, to go back to that and the jumping, there's a progression of the courses so that your green horses can do, the 3-footer, the 3-3, do a little bit more basic of a course. I would like to see a light handy go into the 3-foot greens because they automatically do it when they move up to 3-6. Excuse me. Then the 3-6 horses would have a little bit more of a challenge, but then as you get up to high performance, it would become more challenging. We often just do exactly the same courses, and oftentimes what I always find really unusual is we'll have all straight lines, everything's kind of basic, and then all of a sudden the amateurs come and they're doing broken lines and all the things that are harder, which I think for amateurs, especially in the older groups, I think you have to be thoughtful. There are some seriously good riders and horses and all of those, but I just feel like there should be a progression in course design within the divisions at the horse shows.
Like, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but like course designers, that's another whole topic, but course designers, and I feel this on the jumper side. I mean, I'm not trying to knock anybody, but they make or break a horse show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally can make and break an entire horse show if you don't have an experienced, proper, educated, I don't know what other words you want to say, but a real professional course designer that thinks about exactly the details that you're talking about, thinks about every level that they're building, how they're going to design it, how can they help the horses improve either throughout that week or even into their future. Like all these things are huge variables that go into picking a great and having a great course designer. And I know this is a very big opinion based area, but it's so true. Like I only have, to be honest, on the jumper side, I only have like 5 or 6 that I really trust at a high level. No joke. Sorry, everybody. 5 or 6 I choose from that I really trust to do at a high level. And the higher the level goes, the lower the number goes down. And it's exactly the same thing on the hunter side as well.
And we don't have any young course designers coming up that I know of anyhow. I think it's a hard job. You gotta go first thing in the morning. We have to be there late at night. Yeah, and the other part of doing different courses is you have to really know horses to do different courses, because I would rather have an inexperienced course designer just do basic and make that work than try to do some kind of crazy things, or, it's really a hard challenge, and you're right, because there's a group that at the top level that do a wonderful job, and then it kind of, people just don't have the experience, or they become course designers when they never used to ride or have
How do
horses.
you feel about, I know, Mike, you and I have talked about this topic a lot, and we've tried a lot of different things surrounding it in relation to maybe amateur, junior, or professional, but also like is prize money a big factor in the hunter industry? Like it to me, I've tried certain things. I've had a $150,000 hunter class in Kentucky for a number of years. Our quantities in that actually decreased from year to year, even though people had such an amazing reaction of the format of the class. We called it a Hunter Grand Prix. But prize money doesn't really seem to speak to people in the hunter industry as it does in the jumpers. You can't just throw a lot of prize money and expect there's going to be a lot in it. Actually, it's the opposite I've found, which is like really mind-boggling to me, because one of the main focus of events and running horse shows is the cost, right? So people are like, oh gosh, how can I make more money out of these events to cover my costs and everything? And what I found in the Hunter Grand Prix, which I don't know if you're aware of, but I'm sure you do in other events and stuff, but like I noticed that people weren't competing in the class because they knew they couldn't win. They knew they couldn't compete at that high of a level. So my entry number started to go lower the more prize money I offered, because the other people that might have competed in it were like, well, I don't think I can compete with the top echelon. So it was sort of a really um, interesting thing that came out of it that I never really expected. I thought it'd be the opposite. I thought more people would come because they want a chance to win or compete at a high level or a new format. And it really just didn't go that way.
Well, I think that, for talk about tradition, we're so used to not having prize money that now that we really are getting some wonderful classes. I think your class was great. I thought your new format was really good. Um, I can't answer why they didn't come. I do think that there is an issue in the hunter sport, that there is a group at the top that it's really hard to compete with. And if they're there and they're showing, and you don't have quite the quality, you might not want to risk that entry fee, basically. And, that's just, how things are going right now, and it's unfortunate because sometimes you do have the horse, but you're not within this group, so your ribbons are not quite what you think, or you just don't feel like you can,
Totally.
you know, y
Yeah, like I offered 150,000 the first year. I think I did 125 the second year. And then last year, I offered 25,000. I had the exact same number of entries.
yeah.
You know, um, when we talk about like also like the format of the classes and like what do hunters want? Like in my head, when I think of progression of the sport, I may be wrong, but the something that I've always wanted from hunters in general is that they can get more of in the jumpers than you can in the hunter ring is pace. Like increasing, not even pace of the horses, but like pace of how the event runs and operates, is the pace of things a little bit more easily to spectate or watch or not get bored with these things. So that's sort of where this Hunter Grand Prix sort of came in to my head of like, look, how can we speed this up? How can we make sure the judges score them directly after the last horse? We're not waiting 3 minutes for a score or trying to tally any things. We have a program that does it for us. Scribes with every judge, sort of like in the dressage world or things like that, to where they're doing the physical legwork and the judges just doing their natural scores. And I feel like the pace and the energy just needs to pick up a bit.
I agree. I think that we kind of get caught in that. We are caught in that, even in our handy rounds, when somebody really risks everything and takes the inside track and does it, that they're not rewarded that much. And we're kind of in the midst of a lot of work right now on our judges' education. For the new judges coming along, there are two groups that are working on it, USEF and USHJA, and to try to really make that part of it. The other part that I always loved in the derbies, you had the 1 to 10 handy score that was added in at the end, and they've taken that away. And I think that's a shame. Now they just do it, within the score. But when you had that 1 to 10 additional points and you're on course and you've just had a little error or something, then you can use strategy and you can step it up and do all the inside turns and try to do that. The other thing about prize money I want to bring up, that we actually have lifetime earnings for our hunter riders and do nothing with it. And I think that would really, if we started using our lifetime earnings and making those big marks of where you win 100,000 or 200,000, they won a lot of money, but we do nothing with it. And I think that
No showcase for it.
no showcase for it at all. That if we started doing that, we might see them really going to those big money classes because they would like their lifetime earnings to do more.
Mike, what do you've been through this with me a little bit and experimenting on the different things, like, even us developing the schedule together for our series in Florida at Terra Nova and Sarasota. So we've had thousands of hours of conversations about this, about, what to offer, does prize money, like all these questions, like what's your take on it?
I mean, in the hunters, my experience, I think, excuse me, what's happened at the shows that we've had, I feel like money is not a motivator. That's just what I've noticed. I would say we already used the word tradition, prestige. I think those are motivators, unique events. Hunters, you can't really, reinvent the wheel, but in, they really want something special. And that's more of a motivator than anything. And I think a good concept, like for instance, Derek, we were talking about a couple weeks ago about at the World Cup, and Louise, you competed in it. You had against the European team and the hunters, just unique things like that. It still held the tradition, but it was different and exciting and something to work towards. And obviously with the WCHR, Louise, I think you've been twice, champion of that, and that's a motivator. People work hard to do that. So I think that you have to find things that fit the tradition, but also it's something to work for and be a part of. And that's more
Do you
so
think the
something that
tradition is holding people back? Is that what
no, I think the
get it?
tradition, I think you have to keep the tradition. Like we talked about jumps and whatever. You can't, and we've tried it. You can't completely change the format or how or what you're looking for. You can't do that. It won't work. That just causes a lot of turmoil that's just going to happen innately with it. I just think that you can use tradition in that the way that the hunters have gone and what's looked for and what they expect, but try and build something, a format or a class that's exciting, that they can take part in, but it's also something that people outside of competing in it are excited about as well. And I think, Louise, you can talk more about that experience competing at the World Cup finals, on the team. Obviously, the World Equestrian Games. You had the Hunter Derby as well. I mean, that had to be special. Those are, some really cool things that I haven't seen anything like that in a long time.
Those were such fun things to do. We had the best time, and it was a great team. The Las Vegas class was fun. We really did win the first year, though. I'm sorry, we won.
Maybe we should do that again in 26 because we have World Cup finals in Texas, Fort Worth, 2026.
Talking about it.
Bring that
That's why
out.
we were just talking about it.
Yeah, I think those things, and we really, those things kind of crept up on us a little bit, but they used they actually created a criteria that we had to fit within to be eligible, and I do think that's important. It's not a, invitation only thing. But we used WCHR, and we made sure that that criteria worked. And then the hunter team thing at WEG, that was just a blast. We brought our own horses. We had one exhibition a day, and the rest of the time we hung out at, what is that? The VIP lounge that's named after a whiskey or something. I don't know, but it was awesome. We just had the best time there. And
Yeah, I think it's tough because
Maker's Mark, sorry, Maker's
Maynard
Mark.
Mark.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just gonna say the word I was looking for is experience. Hunter people look for an experience, good sport and experience, and that's more of a motivator I feel than money. Um, so
I think that's everybody and why you choose a certain horse show over another. Honestly, there's a lot of little details that go in that, but yeah, I mean the overall experience that you get from going to a certain event is what's going to leave an impression on your mind. My, you know, those are all the little things that like hunter people want out of an event, and I know that's what this topic is. And it's kind of leading my brain into like other little subtopics of like kind of what's holding hunters back from progressing into, because I think it's funny. Like I mentioned it once on one of our other podcasts, like, I never expected to grow as much as a human in organizing events and learning to be more open-minded to changing the way you think, changing the way I think, to focusing on what the industry wants as a whole. And I think it is like a really important lesson all of us can take and continue to never stop learning on what's evolving and everything. And I think, a lot of things changed during COVID. And then what happened after that and everything. And that was kind of like a break for everybody a reset to be like, okay, we got to think about some new stuff moving forward here. I think for me, if I'm being honest, and I hope this doesn't negatively hurt me, this comment, but I do think the tradition uh, has held the hunter industry back a bit. But I think whatever we do going forward and whatever the players and events do going forward needs to always keep the tradition first and foremost in the back of their mind while incorporating new ideas to make it fun and special and put it in the best light and focus possible. Something that really kind of like affects me internally on the hunter side is the subjectivity. The scoring and then I'm going to go back to our Hunter Grand Prix because this was like I thought about this for literally 2 years of creating that class, and just trying to figure out a way like how do we do a hunter class that takes out as much as possible the subjectivity of it because everybody like it's the same thing with other major sports. I'm not saying it's just hunters. There's ice skating, there's other things that are huge sports that do it the similar way. I'm not
gymnastics.
saying it's wrong. Gymnastics, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying like how do we try to incrementally move a little bit away from that? Because when I came up with the format of the Hunter Grand Prix, it was like let's do 5 judges and let's drop the high and the low score and find that middle ground. Let's make sure all the judges give whatever score they see fit, don't rank them, just say one judge could score the same 85 to 3 different riders. But they had a ranking of the judges. So if there was an overall tie, Judge 1 broke the tie. If that was a tie, Judge went to Judge 2. So you had 5 chances. I think we've actually gone down to Judge 3 before. But I want those judges in my head to score it exactly what they feel, immediately, quick, and let the program, the system, and the quantity of judges average it out. So, of course, the scoring is subjective, but the result in the end comes out to, as a whole, I think the right result. Whoever the winner is was overall over the span of the judges and everything. It really ended up working out so well. But that's something as a whole. Like, I don't know what other avenues, even at the lower levels or things like that. Like, have you thought about that at all?
Well, I kind of mentioned before that we're really in the midst of judging task forces trying to get this sorted out and to have some kind of a deduction that each fault, there would be a prescribed deduction for each fault that the horse makes so that it's a little bit easier to follow. I personally love your idea, the 5 judges drop the high and the low and do all that, and I think that's something that big events should do, but that's not practical for the regular horse show, and that's the hard part about that. But the regular horse show is where we go all the time. And I think that a lot of the problems right now, without offending anyone, but before this, if you wanted to become a judge, you applied and if you checked all the boxes, you became a judge. Now there's a criteria that for you to become a judge, you are going to have to have competed in so many classes or been a trainer for you're going to have some experience within the sport before you can be a judge. That's going to take a couple years to actually produce more judges for that. But I think we're on the right track, and we're also these deductions, I think, will be a big help also. Now, a lot of the judges that have been doing it for years are very much against that they want the freedom to be able to do what they want. But like you talk about tradition, that system of judging needs to be upgraded and updated, and that tradition has held that back for quite a while. Even you see in your equitation finals, now you're having 2 teams I think the McClay had 2 teams of judges, and they didn't even score the first 50 until after 50 had gone, which gave them a feel for the class, and then they were able to score. I'm not sure when they did it after that, but that's a whole new concept too, and that's helpful. And I think that scoring is the only way to go. I don't see how we can ever go backwards from it, even though there are people that don't like it, because it is the only thing that if someone really wants to get educated in the hunter sport, that they can walk up and follow a little bit. I was lucky enough to judge the New England finals a long time ago, and that's how they judged that. There were 5 of us. They didn't want us to do .5s. They didn't want us to rank. You sat, you watched the round, you said the score, dropped high and low. And first of all, it was such an easy, relaxing way to judge because you weren't always, looking at your bookkeeping and .5 and .25 and all that. I really do. I like that. I like it when they're teams of judges. I like it when you get different scores because they see different things. They're from different positions. The one thing we're talking about, and I'm hoping that we can do it, is give for our night classes down here in Wellington, give each judge a monitor because the ring is so big and it's dark, and when you're doing commentary for it, you get to see the screen up close, yet they're looking, across the ring to
Really?
a dark area. We're not sure if that can happen, but we'd love to see that happen.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that because, it's so true. Like, if you're positioned one side of the ring or in a corner and the other one's at the other, and what if that horse has a light rub or is a step late on a lead change or things like this, and you don't notice, the scores are going to be dramatically different. And I get that the averages are supposed to take care of that, but if you're looking at a monitor like a commentator and everything like that, you can pick up on a lot of things and you're seeing the same angles. I remember when I was a junior, I did this East meets West challenge. I don't know if you have remember that or if it's
Yeah.
long time ago. I did it a couple times. It was so awesome. And the judges on each coast watched on a monitor and scored it. And it was just funny. But yeah, like this is such great conversation because these are all little things that are incrementally going to improve people's experience, improve the sport and progress it forward. I think it's a little bit slower than I feel it needs to keep happening in these things, but it sounds like that obviously with your help that it's happening. And I think that that's the most important part of it. You know, the other thing that I think I touched on in the beginning, but we didn't really elaborate on, which has been it's also a really big need and factor I feel like for hunter exhibitors is having the right schedule,
Mm.
you know? Having the right schedule, and, you know, when you have 1,000 horses at a horse show, let's talk about a big horse show, um, it's so hard to get the right schedule. You know, you have so many conflicts, everybody has their own ideas of where and want and selfish reasons sometimes as to why they want something a certain way and where it should be placed and on what day and everything, but can you speak a little bit about how that sort of like what your ideas are regarding, um, in general, framework for management scheduling for on the hunter side?
Um, for me, I think I do like a traditional schedule for that. I like the professionals on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and that's always helpful when you're the rider because then you're kind of finished when you start with your juniors and amateurs. I always like the amateurs, the 3-6 amateurs to have a priority spot because they're usually, especially the older ones, you know, they have jobs or they have families and most of them like to ride early. I've always found that to be nice, and the same thing in the adults. They are our biggest supporter of our sport right now, the amateurs and the adults, and the people with the means to support it because our sport has become ridiculously expensive on every front. There's nothing that is even affordable anymore. The Schedule 2 can affect that cost also, so that if you can have the 3-3 amateurs with the 3-6 amateurs, they might only have to stay at a hotel 2 nights, but if you spread out those, then because a lot of people have a 3-6 and a 3-3 horse, then it means they have to stay longer. We're
Huh.
finding
Interesting.
I'm finding with at least with my clients too that um, they wanna come and show and go home. They don't come and stay for the whole time for 2 weeks unless we're in a, you know, a great like Lake Placid or something like that, where there's a family thing going on outside of the horse show. The other part of the schedule that I think is almost more important is when you make a schedule change, you need to let us know as soon as possible, and there are all those apps now you can use, but there's nothing worse than getting to the horse show at 6 o'clock or all of a sudden it's 7 o'clock and they say, "Oh, no, they switched this, that." And, you know, just like you're scheduling, we're scheduling too, our when our horses go out or get worked or lunged or braided or blah, 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 so, other than that, I don't really have a lot of scheduling issues. I like my mother used to, this is kind of funny, she taught riding, and as she got older, she would tell her clients that she would go to the horse show with them if they were in the first 2 divisions, and if they weren't, she wasn't going. I thought that was so funny.
Huh?
Anyway.
Makes sense.
Mike, you know, I know we've had so much back and forth about like creating a new event, you're starting from scratch. So you have to say, what are the basics to the schedule we have to create that majority is going to like and enjoy. So, and I know we've gone back and forth with this in creating the series and it's Terra Nova. So, what have you found with scheduling issues or what the general consensus is that people want?
I would say it was great to hear Louise say about the hotel thing. I never thought about that. that's so unique to think outside of that and hear that side of it, in terms of expense on the amateur side or the adult side, or regardless, if you spread it out. So that really set in for me. So that was unique to hear. In terms of schedule, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of different events, a lot of startups, and from the basic, right? And I think you just have to strip it down. If you look at a hunter schedule, again, I don't pretend to be an expert on it, but I've been involved in a lot. We know exactly what has to be in that schedule, right? So that's without you have to have all the divisions depending on what your level is or your rating in terms of your show. So you know what you have to offer. And then it's trying to figure out, what unique or special classes you're going to put in. For instance, should we run the USHGA Derby on Friday? Should we run it on Saturday? Saturday afternoon, is it going to conflict? So those type of things, I think when we talk about the basic divisions, they normally run, the professionals, as Louise said, your Wednesday, Thursday, and then you get into your Friday and it's a little sticky because you're adults and the people aren't there yet and you want to conflict with their work schedule and what have you. So then again, it depends on the show, right? And the time of the year, what you can offer. So you have to look at that as well. So I would say start basic, and then you add in the different things by reaching out and knowing what your clientele is and what kind of show you are and what time of year it is. So those are kind of the key factors.
And you commented on what choosing certain events because of sort of like you said, like Placid, like the town, the location, what the offerings are, and then Mike touched on that a little bit of the experience of it's not just the event, right? It's what the whole it's like a trip for everybody. So if you're going to spend all this money to go to this location, you want to have good restaurants, good town, good activities. Even if you're going home and coming back, like you're definitely thinking about those variables when you're choosing what event to go to. And the funny thing is like all the things that you've discussed and talked about today that hunter exhibitors want, I think exhibitors in general want. And I was kind of expecting to hear, not expecting to hear, but like thinking that maybe you might have a different opinion on, but you're going back to the basics of what horse shows need and want, and there's a big difference between the two. And in general, you got to have good footing, you got to have good jumps, you have to have good course designers, you got to have a appropriate schedule, you have to have a good location, you have to have quality judges. These are all the prerequisites for what you need out of horse show. I think the biggest thing that I've sort of experienced, that I've struggled with over the years on the hunter side, is that any kind of change has been just really I get the biggest reaction out of that. And it's such a general statement, but I mean, there could be a flag in the corner, or the jump crew could have accidentally forgotten a pole on the side of the ground, which I've experienced before. And I've gotten screamed at for. And there's it's hard to control every variable of all those different things to it's hard because like I feel like I want to make everybody happy, and I know that's impossible at an event, but the any variable change on the hunter side, and I know I'm generalizing, I think creates the most hysteria. And I think if there's anything that the hunter industry can do better, which it sounds like everybody is working on, is adapting to little changes and being able to understand that certain things are out of
Right.
certain control.
Right.
How do you feel about that? What
I,
do you think?
I think that change is hard for a lot of people, and I'm fortunate enough that I love change. I love to change things around or try new things. But I think it's a fear of you know, we are under the gun as trainers to produce results. That's our job. And
Mhm.
when a new variable comes in, it's a little bit of a, it kinda takes you back and like, "Okay, how's my horse gonna deal with that? How's my rider gonna deal with that?" We always have in the back of our heads how that new change is going to affect our businesses or our lives. And I think that as long as we continue upward and a little bit slowly with the changes, that it'll be, that it'll be accepted a lot more too. And I think the conversation is so important. I think you're
Exactly.
doing this is, to talk about the change and how we should be changing. And then I think people accept it a lot more than if they're blindsided by something. And the more conversations, the more thoughts. We're having a hunter forum down here, and it's hosted by WCHR, but it's going to be we're going to talk about the Derby, the green incentive, course
Mhm.
design, judges, all kinds of things to just standalone events, which I'm going to encourage you to do. We would love some standalone events, do a derby with a national derby, be creative with some other classes and try to just give us 2 rings or something, or, one main ring and another, and really create something that we can bring our clients to and still make a living, um, and everybody gets to show. But right now, it's hard because indoors you might have 2 horses or 3 horses. You don't get to bring everybody with you. And I think that's something that the horse shows have made really do really well. You can be a short stirrup rider and have a $1 million Grand Prix, you can bring everybody. And that's a little bit of the problem, like with Derby finals or something like that, because if you make it stand alone, then they say that you can't bring your clients. Well, create a standalone event that everybody can bring everybody with and really make it special, and don't make us, have 5 rings going at the same time and not really get to focus on those important classes. Those jumper riders, they don't have to worry usually about the low adult when the $1 million class is going. I mean, they obviously have a lot of concerns about their other, but usually when those big classes are going, they're not worried about, you know, somebody in the long stirrup class or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think showcasing the best parts of it is really important. Like Junior Hunter Finals is gonna be a standalone event
Yep.
this year. It's literally gonna be the main focus of that entire week to obviously present, you know, those divisions in the best light possible and give them the best experience. So yeah, I mean it's just great to hear all this insight into this, and like you said, incrementally, if these little changes are made, then it'll become more common practice and everything. And I think, like, to add a little bit to your comment about the trainers, you're totally right. Like, I think their fear is not to not be prepared enough
Yeah.
in order to get the appropriate result. And those reactions come from that. And you made another point earlier, which I didn't even think about, even though we do it anyway. Like at our events, we always offer ticketed warm-ups throughout the week in the ring so you can get a feel for the jumps and get acclimated. But that's part of that preparation, and that's why they do that, right?
Yeah.
So those horses can see, get acclimated, and make sure they're prepared for anything that could happen during competition. It's like doing your homework.
Yeah.
And that's just such a good point as to, I think that's why I think the reactions when something goes wrong or is a little bit changed in the hunter world, the reactions is much bigger than it is
Yeah.
in the jumper world. And I think that's because it's, like you said, it's an unknown variable that they couldn't prepare for.
Yeah.
Could that be an accurate assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Pressure, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I think came out cool from this group conversation here is I think we should think about doing a showcase during World Cup Finals 2026. Oh, I'm
Awesome.
doing a jumper clinic. I'm doing a dressage clinic because we have show jumping and dressage finals in Fort Worth 2026. But I thought of something else. Like, what if we expanded on sort of what they did um and we can talk about this more offline. What if we expanded on what was done like in Vegas? Because I remember watching that and thinking it was so cool. And it was so exciting. We could showcase the hunter industry a little bit because it's big in here in America. So if you're having a championship, the entire world is watching. Right? There's 3 major championships. You have World Cup Finals, the Olympics, and World Equestrian Games. Like those are the biggest of the big. And what better platform to put it in a certain light? What if we did like a hunter showcase where you incorporated sort of like you did in Vegas? So you have 100 riders, you have jumper riders, but in Worth, it's pretty unique. We have Western there too, and the cowboy culture is going to come out in World Cup Finals 2026, and a lot of these reining professionals, cutting professionals, everything that are based there in Fort Worth. I mean, those are riders.
Yeah, they are.
Because when you're a good rider on a horse, you're a good rider on a horse. So I think it could be really unique to incorporate all three into this showcase. But since hunters are not a part of World Cup Finals, that hunter discipline could maybe be that focus, and I think it would be really entertaining.
I think it'd be awesome. And why can't hunters be part of that program?
Yeah,
Well,
Good
maybe
point.
you should do that.
eventually.
And
Be a long time to create that, but totally. I mean, it's part of our sport. When we're bidding these, hunter. Maybe we create a hunter World Cup Finals. These are real championships that put the sport at the highest level.
yeah,
And that's what everybody aspires to look up to, and that could be really cool. We need to talk about that.
I had one thought. I just before we finish up, but I was thinking back about this, how subjective it is in terms of, big pinnacle hunter classes, and how you have 5 judges, and how much pressure there is, and it's there's a lot on the line for, the owners, the professional, the rider. Why, with all the technology out there, why couldn't you have video it, which they do anyways, and you have an instant replay, and you have another judge that watches that, and if he sees anything that everybody else missed, then you go to that being maybe the 6th judge, and that takes out, so much of it. Just a thought.
It's a good
But
point.
I
Like
think it would
refereeing a football game, having
100%.
instant replay
It's
or
come into every sport now. The replay, why not use it in this? In soccer, it took a long time. Now they do it. There's so many people flailing themselves on the ground when they're not even hurt. And, they go back and do an instant replay. And it's like, it's not that happens in the hunters, but it just takes out all the guessing,
Yeah.
and at the end, the judge can say, hey, we need to award, X amount of points. We can talk through this. But anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, but you're right. That's where like you could X number of points for a rub, or an X number of points for one stride mislead change, or these kind of things. So you could really kind of get an accurate score to, what do you think about that, Louise? That's a good point.
I think it's awesome. We talk about instant replay and haven't quite got, because really we need to get ahead of it, not be behind it. We're behind it right now because there are things that happen on course that the judge is marking his card or something like that. I mean, those things are going to happen. But if we had instant replay and they said, "Oh my gosh, I missed that," it would be awesome. I think it'd only be for big classes again.
Yeah, for sure.
But the
100%.
idea of the additional judge watching that is, that's a new one. I think that's really good. I think anything like this could really advance our sport, um, a lot. I mean, it's awesome. We do go slowly forward. I think with our new leadership, we're going to be able to go faster forward with a lot of this stuff, and I think that's really an important. There are a lot of people that are involved that are really you gave me credit earlier. You shouldn't give me credit for all this because there's a lot of people that do a lot of work volunteering and putting in their time and coming up with new ideas, and I do think it's really a good time in our sport of hunters that it's gonna go forward.
Yeah, one negative to the replay, like you were saying, Mike, could be that it might add some more time to the process, which would be probably a negative. So that might need to be worked through um a little bit. But yeah, totally. I mean, I'm all for
I don't think you
anything that
stop anything. You adjust it after the fact, and say the last rider had an adjustment of whatever, so it doesn't slow down anything. But
yeah,
again,
or
this is
maybe you have a different judge assessing those things a
Yes.
little time that
yes,
could do.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's all awesome conversation, and I just want to go back on before we finish up, touch on a point that you made earlier, Louise, about the amateurs being one of the largest parts of events and really making sure that we cater to them and focus them. You're so right. I've realized that, you know, some of the biggest hunter divisions at the show are those 2'6", 2'9", 3-foot hunter divisions where it is a hobby, but it really means something to them, you know, and the focus can't just be always in the side ring or these kind of things. And that's why I'm really excited about this year, because we have amateur hunter finals as well during our Kentucky National event in September. And Pat's coming on the team to help us lead that charge on the hunter side as well, Pat Boyle. And that's what I want to do with that. Like, I want to make those exhibitors, especially at that event and that championship for them, like special, like they've never experienced. And they deserve to feel like an event is catering to them in a specific way. And sometimes events, especially big events, really get lost in the quantities, and it's near impossible to give everyone that attention.
Yeah.
And for a number of reasons, cost, staffing, you know, it comes down to staffing, making sure your staff feels the same way and is there to cater to everybody. But when it's focused like that on a championship, I think that can really start that improvement and change. And then that can become hopefully a new normal for each level and each, you know, division's experience can improve that way. You know, when something is newly showcased in a major way, then it can continue to improve. And I think that's awesome that championship is starting this year, because it needs to, like they need a championship of that caliber to have a goal and strive for, and then be provided with that great experience of a special event.
I think that's awesome you have that, and I'm looking forward, but we've talked about that for a long time, and it could never go forward up the ladder, but now it is. It brings me to another thing, is the secondary rings at horse shows should be dressed and decorated just like the main ring. I know at Brandywine, we spent a lot of effort in the gold ring to make it look as much as we could like the main ring, and I think at a lot of horse shows, the secondary ring looks like a secondary ring. It never gets newer, different jumps. It never gets freshened up. And I think that's goes right to the amateurs and the adults and all that they get to have a special experience, even when it's not a fantastic, finals. Well,
I think some events can afford to do that. Others, obviously, as you know,
right.
can't. But definitely at certain events, feature events, large events that we know can afford it, need to make that extra effort.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
it's just funny because, like, I come from the jumper side, right? And have always been, wrongfully so, okay, I can admit it, less on the decoration side.
Ooh.
And less on the decoration side, more showcase on the actual physical design of the jumps. Like, even I think one of our very first shows 10 years ago, Mike, I was like, let's not do plants. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You gotta do plants.
Cool with me.
Yeah. And I'm like, but the jumps look so nice. Let's keep it simple. I've
Yeah.
seen it before. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
Like, we got,
Well,
so
Louise made that point too about the hunter jumps, and then you talked about it, which I still don't understand, because some people do it, some course designers do it. You have this beautiful, ornate hunter jump, and then you stick plants in front of it, and you can't even see it. So
Pat's you're gonna have a ball, Pat.
I know, but I
He's
understand it too.
the king of
The
decor.
layers look pretty. I understand it, but I just
Can I give you his reason? Because I've asked him this
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for him. We'll have him on at some point, and
Okay.
he can
Yes.
give it to it. He's the king of decoration. I brought him on for one of those reasons, is decoration. He's taught me a lot. I actually sent him a photo. We did such a monster decoration in the fall with mums at one of our events and horse shows. I sent him a photo. I'm like, I'm bringing out my inner Pat, and he loved it. But the funny thing is I asked him that once. I'm like, dude, that jump is so cool. Don't block it. And he goes, Derek, believe it or not, the horses, when it's more full around the standards and the bases and the boxes with brush and flowers and everything, those horses get to the base of that jump and just fire, and bring out the best in the horse's jump. They jump better when they feel like that's my this is him saying, that is my experience, that the horses are showcased better when it's fuller like that. And I thought it was a really interesting take. What do you think?
I think I think he's right. I think they really, they jump better when there's a little depth to it and a little bit, something natural they can look at, but jump higher and jump better. When you get just a plain old oxer with nothing, they jump like it's a plain jump. So he's
Yeah,
exactly
but we
right.
talked about doing cool new jump designs. So like maybe we do both.
Yeah, you've gotta do both a little bit. You don't have to always have the flowers and stuff, but anyway.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask one more, maybe a little bit controversial topic.
Mhm.
Okay. And you answer it how you like. I'm going to give my opinion on it. Um, Now we know jumpers and hunters are different in the quantity of rounds that they compete at each event or can compete at in each event. To be honest, I don't know the rules. I probably should have before I asked this question. I don't know what the regulations are for how many can or can't, or if there is or there isn't rounds in a week. And you spoke a little bit earlier on, which has always been a little bit in my mind of like, you have the professional show, the hunters sometimes before you do that in jumpering too. If you're an amateur jumper, professional can show the horse earlier in the week, get acclimated, do it later in the week. The client does it. But in the hunters, I think it's very different. And I think it's important for people to hear, you know, um, hunters are not jumping as many jumps per round as jumpers are in a round in a jump off. So you have that. So when a hunter does 2 rounds in a day versus one jumper, it may be the same amount of jumps. So I just want people to understand that, that have a strong opinion on this. Do you have an opinion on what a limit should be in a schedule a single horse should jump in a week? Do you think it's a number of factors that go into that? Um, I know it's a little bit of a hot topic, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I do think that there's a middle ground.
I think you're exactly right, and I do think that we jump our horses too much. Just going back a little bit, the formula for world champion hunter rider is your best 4 horse shows in a region. So that takes out a lot of the running and jumping, but it's really hard, and I'm not gonna try to be judgmental of people that are trainers that jump their horses too much. It usually bites you in the end because they don't stay sound. I personally think if a horse is doing 2 divisions, where you have a professional ride it, and then you have the junior or the amateur ride it, and you're at a 2-week horse show, they do both divisions the first week and 1 division the next week, with possibly the second week, a little warm up or, something like that. I think a lot of it just is, horsemanship. If you don't consider your horse enough, your horses aren't gonna last, and we've seen that. We still see that even at the upper levels, horses that go so much. There's one in particular that goes all the time and still wins a lot, but boy, oh boy, is he a good horse. Anyway, I think it's horsemanship, and I think that that needs to be taught again to our younger trainers coming up, because I think they're not always taught that longevity is really important in your horses and in your top horses. If you jump them too much, they aren't top horses for long. They start to hit the jumps, not be as special. I think judges also like to see a fresh horse, not a fresh horse that's bucking or spooking, but a horse that jumps in a fresh way, that, like you talk about the depth of the jump or Pat putting the flowers in front of it. That's what you want to accomplish every time they walk in the ring. And if they walk in the ring too often, they don't have that anymore.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like I'm so glad because like when I'm watching hunters, like I'm like, because I have a jumper background, right? I've done hunters too. I know about it, but like freshness, like I feel like this shouldn't be penalized. I just really do. I mean, these horses should be able to be happy and exuberant and really showing the best of themselves. And I think that that's part of the judging education, maybe also that can progress a little bit into the future.
Yeah.
And you're so right, horsemanship. I mean, the trainers have to use their discretion on what's right, of what that horse can handle, what it can't handle, what's too much, what's too little, and be conscious of those variables. And I appreciate you answering that topic. I know it's not an easy one to answer, and honestly, I appreciate you talking I think this was our longest episode we've done to date, but for good reason. I'm sure we're all so passionate about every angle of this industry, honestly, and I know that if we were to stay on the phone for 6 hours, the conversation wouldn't stop.
For sure.
There's so many. So this is a great start. This is definitely only part one of this episode, because I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on it, and I want to hear it all, and I want everybody to hear it all, because these conversations can only be good for the industry. So I thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this episode.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this too, because as you said, it's so important to communicate everything. So, but great job for you, and good luck with all your horse shows coming up. I can't wait to come to Fort Worth.
To one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to do something cool with that. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely call you offline, and we can discuss that.
Okay, great.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Horse Show 360 podcast. What a cool episode this was with Louise Serio and Mike Belisle. You can follow us on all of our podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our iHeartRadio. Also follow us on Instagram, HorseShow360, and you can watch this entire episode video on HorseShow360 podcast YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to that. Thank you guys again, and we hope you keep tuning in. Appreciate it.